But did she mention any in particular? Did she make any names?
Well, she talked about Amanda because...
So she talked to you about Amanda.
Because Amanda joined the flat a month after Meredith.
That is to say?
Amanda came to the flat about the end of September.
Quindi mi ha parlato di questions about her, something particular.
She said, she seemed very young, and because of that, she helped her, took her out and introduced her to people.
Who was younger? Amanda.
Yeah.
So Meredith felt as if she should introduce her.
And because she was new to the flat and the area, she kind of, showed her where things were and introduced her. And she told me then when Amanda got a job in a bar. And
ha trovato un lavoro in un bar. So she told you about this job Amanda has found in a bar.
Sì, l'interprete che è presente alla redazione del verbale. Ecco, continui.
Sì, ok, go on.
And she said, when she first started at the bar, she and I think the two Italian girls and maybe a couple of other people went to the bar to kind of support Amanda. And she said it was, fairly empty and very boring, but they kind of sat there and had a drink just to kind of show support for Amanda. But
so Meredith was present.
Yeah, but
when these two new girls joined Amanda in the bar, you said?
Yeah. But they weren't particularly friendly as such, and she was quite surprised when she suddenly had this boyfriend.
The Italian one, you mean?
Yes, because Amanda had only been there a short time, and because being so young, she was a bit shocked, that she sort of got this boyfriend and was kind of parading around with him.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear thoughts build up until I can't feel. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. Well, at the beginning of this clip, you heard the voice of Arlene Kercher, that is Meredith's late mother. She has died along with her father, but that was her talking in 2007, around about 6 days after Meredith was found. And you can see there's a totally different picture based on Meredith's mother's retelling of events of Amanda Knox. When Amanda Knox talks about herself, she describes herself as a femme fatale, and we dealt with that in a previous video, and Meredith as withdrawn. Whereas in Arlene's version of events, the picture's slightly different, where you see Meredith being someone who's a lot savvier, a lot more au fait with the area. She's been living there a month longer. She knows a lot more people, and she's kind of trying to introduce, trying to enable, trying to assist Amanda in sort of settling in and getting to know the people and the neighborhood. And I do think we need to ask this question repeatedly. What's wrong with this picture? Now, the great thing about the new documentary, executive produced by Amanda Knox, is it provides yet another version of events from the original suspect, now the exoneree. In a series of images, we see something that Amanda Knox apparently remembers from the morning after the murder. Remember, this is her, one would assume, putting her rubber stamp on the series, saying, this is how I was dressed, this is what I was doing, this is what I was thinking, this is my version of events, this is my self-validating story, right? And we simply have to ask one simple question. Is it true? Is it accurate? And remember, this is really important, these particular images, because this is the morning after the murder, before Meredith's body had even been found by the authorities. At this point, when you're seeing these images, Meredith's body is in a room, just undiscovered. Now, looking at these images of pretend Knox with the mop on the morning of November 2nd, it's hard to believe anyone would wear white while mopping up a bloodbath, and doesn't that mean she wasn't? Or was she not wearing white? Because this question in turn raises two more curious questions. We'll begin with the first, but before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. By the way, in the video I did yesterday on the Ramsey case, I meant to show this picture. It's an excerpt from Law and Disorder, and it just shows where the writer, John Douglas, by the way, he's also given his opinion on the Amanda Knox case. You must let me know if you're interested in that. But in the Ramsey case, he basically says he actually thought that the killer in that case was John Mark Carr. Anyway, let me know if you want me to deal with Douglas's assessment of Amanda Knox. Any idea of what he thought in that particular case? Also, if you're finding this analysis worthwhile, please like, share, leave a comment. You can also hit the thanks button, and let's get started. So the two questions raised by just what we're seeing in these images. The first one is, you forgot the thick grey socks. If none of Meredith's friends noticed the red welt, a possible scratch mark on Knox's neck as they sat in the Questura, well, three of them, Robin, Sophie and Amy, they noticed something else. And on paper you might think that's not really particularly useful or important. Well, it is in the context of this reenactment. Besides her white skirt and blue sweater, which she was wearing at the Questura, they saw that Knox was wearing thick grey socks which went up to her knees. This is an excerpt from John Follain's A Death in Italy. Before flying off to Perugia, Sophie had talked to Amy and Robin about what lay ahead. Amy and Robin were more certain of Amanda's guilt than Sophie was. The three had dissected what they saw of Amanda's behavior after the murder again and again. They had all been struck by what Amanda had chosen to wear on the morning after the murder: a white skirt, a blue sweater, and thick grey socks, which went up to her knees. That's quite a detailed description. The three friends all thought the socks and the skirt were a strange combination. Why hadn't she just put some jeans on? Robin guessed that she'd chosen the long, thick socks to cover up scratch marks. But pretend Knox in the reenactment 17 years later, is she wearing socks? Is she wearing grey socks? Is she wearing thick grey socks? Is she wearing thick grey socks which go up to her knees? She doesn't seem to be wearing socks, grey or otherwise. Look closer.
Closer.
So do you see the reenactment clearly gets this detail wrong? Thick grey socks and up to the knee. And the real Knox would later wear Celeste's green jacket, which begs the question, why didn't Knox have a clean jacket or trousers to wear on such a cold day? Number 2, what Quintavalle said about how Knox was dressed that morning. In Amanda Knox's book, she says on the morning after the murder, she went from Celeste's apartment back to the cottage carrying a black bag filled with dirty clothes. This is an excerpt from Knox's book, Waiting to be Heard. One of the things I'm sure that definitely happened the night on which Meredith was murdered was that Raffaele and I ate fairly late, I think around 11 in the evening. So that's where she's saying she was really at the time of the incident. And then she says, although I can't be sure because I didn't look at the clock. So she qualifies that. Remember, Curatolo thought he saw a couple lingering around the railing, right, at Piazza Grimana. Then Knox says, after dinner I noticed there was blood on Raffaele's hand, but I was under the impression that it was blood from the fish. So at the time of the murder, Amanda is seeing blood on her boyfriend's hand. After we ate, Raffaele washed the dishes, so right after that there's washing going on, but the pipes under his sink broke and water flooded the floor. So there's now also water on the floor in this scenario. It's also not Meredith's veins that are breaking and blood flowing, but the pipes under his sink breaking and water flooding the floor. But because he didn't have a mop, I said we could clean it up tomorrow because we, Meredith, Laura, Philomena and I, have a mop at home. I remember it was quite late because we were both very tired, though I can't say the time. Now she reiterates that. The next thing I remember was waking up the morning of Friday. That's the morning Meredith's body was found, November 2nd, around 10 a.m. In other words, now she can remember the time, and now she remembers it being late. And this is in contrast to Quintavale thinking he saw a blue-eyed, pale-faced young lady at the moment that his shop opened, 7:30. And she says, and I took a plastic bag to take my dirty clothes to go back to my house. So she also says that she changed clothes at home, right, at the cottage, before returning to Celeste's wearing the white skirt. She says, it wasn't until I got out of the shower, this is in the cottage, that I noticed a reddish-brown splotch about the size of an orange on the bath mat. Now, to be clear, it's actually a footprint in blood in the bath mat. And then she writes, more blood. Could Meredith have started her period and dripped? But then how would it have gotten on the sink? My confusion increased. By the way, this tactic of putting in italics apparently her thoughts is the same thing used in the Ramsey book, The Death of Innocence. Knox goes on to write, we were usually so neat. I went to my room while putting on a white skirt and a blue sweater, thought about what to bring along my trip to Gubbio with Raffaele. So even in her story, in her book, she doesn't mention the socks. So who is right here? The three British girls or Knox? There's no mention of socks in Knox's account. Meanwhile, Quintavale describes Knox at 07:30 that morning dressed in jeans, a grey jacket and a hat. Let's go to ABC News for that. Quintavale told prosecutor Giuliano Mignini that a young woman with remarkable blue eyes and a face so pale that he was struck by it entered his store just as he opened it that day. She was wearing jeans, a grey jacket and a hat, he said. She went to the upper level of the store, which is just down the road from Celeste's house. Without returning his greeting, Quintavale said, and left shortly thereafter, heading down the street in the direction of the house where Kercher was killed. Quintavale said he did not see if she had purchased anything because he was not at the cash register. It's pretty unfortunate. This, to me, re-establishes Quintavale's credibility. It's not as though he saw photos of Knox in the paper and then testified 2 years later that she was wearing the same clothing. If we accept that Knox had a warm grey jacket when she headed back to the crime scene that morning, then what happened to it? Why is she so underdressed that morning that Celeste has to give up his green jacket while they're standing outside? Also, what the latest production also appeared to have depicted is the mark on Knox's neck. So she's actually acknowledging it. How did that happen? Well, in her book, she writes the following. After I was accused of murder, people read new meaning into everything about me. A hickey on my neck became a scratch from Meredith in her last desperate moments. Does this look like a hickey? And this is why I say in the Knox case, we have to ask the question repeatedly, what's wrong with this picture? Because two pictures are being presented, two stories are being told. Which one is true? Which one is real? I'm not going to take it further than that, but for those still listening, thank you for being here. I do want to recommend you listen to the video, The Scream. That I feel is one of the most important videos we've made in this series. I'll put a link to it in the description. It should be appearing on your screen right now. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.